The dust was rising like smoke over the prairie that afternoon. The sun leaned low over the horizon, turning the sky to gold and rust. It was the kind of light that made everything look softer, even the scars on the land. Out there, on a lonely stretch between nowhere and forever, a wagon rolled slow, worn wheels creaking, canvas torn by wind and time. Inside that wagon sat a woman who had seen too much of both. Her name was Clara Dawson. A widow. Her husband had died the winter before, frozen on the cattle trail outside Abilene. She'd buried him with her own hands, then packed up her 3 boys and what little she had left, heading west toward a place she'd only heard about in passing, a small settlement where folks said new beginnings were still possible. Welcome to Frontier Echoes, where forgotten tales of the Old West ride again. If you love stories born from dust, heartache, and the sound of hooves echoing across endless plains, you're in the right saddle. So sit close to the fire and listen well. This one's called We're Home Now. All accepted, said the cowboy. The widow with 3 sons had been rejected. The wagon rattled over a dry creek bed, and Clara's hands tightened around the reins. Her eldest boy, Samuel, rode beside her on a skinny old mule, trying to act like the man of the family though he couldn't have been more than 12. The younger 2, Jonah and Luke, sat inside, their small faces peeking through the flaps of the canvas, eyes wide at the emptiness that surrounded them. For weeks, every town Clara passed through had turned her away. "Ain't got room for beggars," one storekeeper had spat. "No charity here," another had said. Out on the frontier, kindness was often buried under the same dirt that took men too early. She'd learned to expect nothing, and still hope anyway. As the sun began to dip, Clara spotted a small cluster of buildings in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys, the smell of bread drifted faintly on the wind. A town. "Hold on, boys," she whispered, her voice cracking from thirst. "Looks like we might sleep under a roof tonight." When she rolled into town, folks stopped what they were doing to stare. It wasn't often that a lone wagon rolled in with a woman driving and 3 boys beside her. Children peeked from windows, men paused outside the saloon, and women whispered behind half-closed doors. Clara climbed down from the wagon, brushing dust off her skirt. She led her boys toward the general store. The bell above the door rang when she stepped inside. A heavy-set man behind the counter looked up, his eyes narrowing. "Help you, ma'am?" "I'm looking for work," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can sew, cook, clean, anything. I just need a chance. My boys can help with chores. We'll work for food and a place to stay." The man grunted. "This ain't no charity town. We ain't got much to spare." She nodded slowly, her eyes burning but her pride holding strong. "Thank you anyway." As she turned to leave, a small voice behind her spoke up. "Mama, I'm hungry." The man's wife, who'd been stacking shelves nearby, looked at the boy and hesitated. But before she could say a word, her husband barked, "Ain't our problem, Sarah. Don't get involved." Clara left the store without another word, her boys trailing behind her. The sun was gone now, and the chill of night settled in. She found an empty barn outside of town and decided they'd sleep there. She gathered old straw, wrapped her boys in blankets, and sat beside them as they fell asleep one by one. She stared through the cracks in the barn wall at the stars, millions of them, scattered like hope too far away to reach. She was drifting between prayer and exhaustion when she heard the soft sound of hooves. A figure rode slowly toward the barn. She reached for the small pistol she kept tucked under her blanket, her heart pounding. The rider dismounted, tall and broad-shouldered, his hat low against the moonlight. "Don't mean to scare you, ma'am," came a calm voice. "Just noticed your wagon outside town. Folks said a woman and some boys were camped out here." Clara stood, her voice firm. "We don't want trouble, mister." The cowboy took a slow step forward, hands open. "Ain't lookin' for trouble. Name's Caleb Hart. I've got a small ranch a few miles west. Saw you looked like you could use some help. She studied him in the half-light, dust on his boots, kindness in his eyes, and something else too. Sadness. The kind that a man carries when he's buried more than one dream. I can pay you in work, Clara said finally. But we can't take charity. Caleb smiled faintly. I reckon work's exactly what I need. My place has been quiet too long. By dawn, Clara and her boys were riding beside him toward the Hart Ranch. It was a modest spread, weathered fences, an old barn, and a house that looked lonely even in the sunlight. Caleb dismounted and helped her down. You and the boys can stay in the bunkhouse for now, he said. It ain't much, but it's warm. For the first time in months, Clara smiled. Thank you, Mr. Hart. He tipped his hat. Caleb will do. The days that followed were full of work. Clara cooked, cleaned, and tended the small garden while the boys helped with feeding the horses and mending fences. Caleb worked alongside them, quiet but steady, his presence bringing a kind of peace she hadn't felt in years. In the evenings, after supper, the boys would fall asleep by the fire while Clara sat on the porch, sewing by lantern light. Caleb would join her, sipping coffee, the silence between them soft and easy. You've done a lot in a short time, he said one night. Clara smiled faintly. When you've had everything taken from you, you learn to build again fast. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I know that feeling. She looked at him, curiosity in her eyes. You have family? He stared out at the dark hills. Had. My wife and little girl passed 3 winters ago. Fever took them both. Clara's heart ached. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said quietly. Ain't much to be done about what the good Lord decides. The wind whispered across the plains. Somewhere far off, a coyote cried. They sat in silence a long time after that, 2 souls who had both known loss but somehow found a small corner of peace in each other's company. Weeks turned into months. The ranch began to thrive again. Caleb's laughter returned, slow and cautious, but real. The boys grew strong, and for the first time since her husband's death, Clara began to believe in home again. But not everyone in town saw it that way. When Clara went into town to buy supplies, whispers followed her. She's livin' up there with him, one woman hissed. No preacher, no vows, shameless. Another replied, and with 3 boys? She's probably after his land. Clara kept her head high, but the words cut deep. She was tired of being judged for surviving. When she returned to the ranch, Caleb saw the look in her eyes. They said something, didn't they? She tried to smile. It doesn't matter. Yeah, he said softly, it does. He stood there for a long time, thinking. Then he said, you and the boys belong here, Clara. I don't give a damn what they say. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't know what that means to me. He smiled gently. I think I do. That night, he hitched the wagon and told her to bring the boys. We're going into town, he said. The townsfolk stared as the wagon rolled up to the church. Caleb climbed down, his hat pulled low, and offered his hand to Clara. Come on, he said quietly. Let's make this right. The preacher looked surprised when they walked in. Caleb Hart. Haven't seen you in near a year. What brings you here? Caleb looked at Clara, then back to the preacher. I reckon I'm done livin' half a life. We'd like to be married, if the lady'll have me. Clara's breath caught. Her boys stared up at her, their faces hopeful. She nodded, her voice trembling. I'd be honored. Within the hour, under the flicker of oil lamps, the preacher said the words that bound them. When it was done, Caleb turned to the boys and knelt. You 3 listen here, he said softly. You've got my name now. You've got my land, my roof, and my word. You're home now, all accepted." Samuel's eyes filled with tears as he whispered, "Thank you, sir." Caleb smiled. "No, son. Thank you." That night, when they returned to the ranch, the stars burned bright over the prairie. The house no longer looked lonely. Laughter echoed from the porch, and for the first time, there was warmth that wasn't just from the fire, it was from belonging. The days ahead weren't easy. Life on the frontier never was. But now, when storms came and winds howled, there was more than one set of hands to hold the walls steady. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind quieted and the world was still, Caleb would whisper to himself, "We're home now." He'd glance toward the woman sleeping beside him, her hair loose across the pillow, and the three small shadows resting safely in the next room. Maybe the frontier took everything from a man before it gave something back. But when it did, when it finally did, it gave him everything that mattered. The West was full of hard stories, but some ended softer than you'd think. This is Frontier Echoes, where every creak of a saddle and whisper of the wind carries a story worth remembering. If you felt the fire of the frontier tonight, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell us down in the comments, where in this wide world are you watching from? Until next time, keep your heart steady and your spirit strong. The frontier remembers.